Before that, let us go through the type of documents. For ease of explanation, we will split it into two categories of transactions. The first category is regular documents. These refer to the documents by the supplier to the buyer. There are four types of documents under it: invoice, credit note, debit note, and refund note. For all regular documents, suppliers' fields will be pre-populated. The process of issuance across these four documents are largely similar, with the only key difference: credit note, debit notes, and refund notes have an extra reference field, which allows users to cross-reference a previously issued invoice document. The second category is self-billed. Self-billed documents are issued by buyers in certain circumstances, such as when the buyer purchases from a foreign supplier. Further information on the specific circumstances for self-billed documents can be found in the specific guidelines. Again, there are four types: self-billed invoice, credit note, debit note, and refund note. The process of issuance of self-billed documents are largely similar to regular issuance. Two differences being that the buyer's details fields instead of the supplier's fields will be pre-populated. And second, for self-billed credit, debit, and refund notes, there is the extra cross-reference field for related self-billed invoice documents. Each of these 8 documents mentioned can be presented as consolidated e-invoices. Consolidated e-invoices are required in 4 circumstances. 1. When a supplier needs to account for transactions where e-invoices were not required by buyer. When the supplier requires adjustments to transactions which have been included in consolidated e-invoices previously. 3. A buyer issues a consolidated e-invoice for transactions where suppliers do not require e-invoices, of which is done under specific circumstances. Lastly, when a buyer has to perform adjustments to the transactions which have been included in consolidated self-billed e-invoices previously. The process of issuance follows that of the selected document type, with one additional requirement to select Consolidated e-Invoice 004 at the classification code field in the line item page. Do not worry, we'll be leading you throughout this whole process. Let's start with the regular documents. From the MyInvoice portal landing page, look at the navigation bar on the left side of the screen. Click on New Document to start creating a new invoice document. Under the type of document, select Invoice from the drop-down. Choose the document version type from the document version drop-down. By default, the most recent version 1.1 will be selected. Click Start. The document submission form has 5 tabs: Basic Information, Supplier and Buyer, Line Items, Additional Information, and Summary and Submit. In the first tab, there is Internal ID and Date Time Issued. These fields will be auto-generated by the system. You may click Override to edit the internal ID and date time issued information to your preference. However, we recommend to remain with the pre-filled information. Click Continue. The next tab shows supplier and buyer details. In the supplier section, certain fields are automatically filled in. Click the MSIC code drop-down to select a MSIC code. Then provide a description for the business activity. Next, Supplier will need to key in the buyer details. In the buyer section, choose the ID type and enter the ID number and TIN of the buyer. Click Validate to validate the buyer's information that was provided. If the information does not match, it will display buyer's details is invalid. Once the buyer's details have been validated, the ID and TIN number fields will be grayed out and the remaining fields will be available for manual entry. Please be reminded that at least the mandatory buyer fields marked with asterisks are completed. Click Continue to move to the next page. In the Line Items page, click the field next to Currency to open a list of currency. Click the drop-down and select the desired currency. The Malaysian Ringgit has already been set by default. If users are using a different currency, they may change it by clicking the drop-down. To add a line item, click on Add Line. A pop-up will appear and users will need to key in the relevant item details. For the ease of this demo, we will lead your attention to certain fields only, but rest assured, the definition of each of these data fields can be found in the user guide, which is uploaded on the MyText and MyInvoice portal. One of the fields is the classification code, which refers to the category of products or services being billed. Click on the arrow on the right to open the Options drop-down. A product classification code list will appear over the page. If there are no classification code that matches the product, users can use the classification code Others. From the list, you would be able to select your product's classification codes. Note that you would also be able to select multiple options of codes if it applies to your products. Moving on, users will need to input the details of the product or service provided. Users will also need to define the quantity of the products that they sell. When the measurement list drop-down appears, you can start choosing the measurement for the items that is being keyed in. Click the measurement drop-down to select your product's measurement. Once the measurement has been selected, input the quantity or amount of product, as well as the price of product per unit. The portal can perform calculations automatically, so fields such as total sales amount will be calculated when quantity and unit price are entered. At the end of the form, there is a section for taxes. If the transaction have tax exemptions, user may insert the amount of tax that the buyer is exempted from and provide reasons for the exemption. If tax apply, start by clicking Add Tax to add a tax information line. Select the field under the column type and drop-down will be available for user to choose the proper category of tax. If tax is not applicable for this transaction, select Not Applicable from the drop-down. You can choose to populate number of units and rate per unit fields or rate. Once all details are filled, click on Add. If you want to add another line item, click on Add and New. After adding the line item, users will return to the viewing page where they can see all the details they have keyed in. Users may click the Simplified View button to toggle between Simplified View and Full View. This is the full view of the line item, where it will show all the data fields that have been keyed in. Click Continue. In the fourth tab, you can provide any other additional information, including frequency of billing, billing period and shipping, import and export information. For the frequency of billing, users need to input the frequency according to the current frequency of issuing statements, bill such as daily, weekly and monthly. For the payment mode, users may input the payment method and prepayment amount if it applies in the transaction made with buyer. Under shipping information, users can input the details of recipients that the product is being shipped to. If the buyer is purchasing the product and requested the supplier to deliver it to someone else. Lastly, if the product is being imported or exported, users can input the custom and exporter information into the invoice. Click Continue. Users will first see the buyer and supplier details that they have inputted in the invoice. Line item details, additional information keyed in, shipping as well as import and export information. Once the details have been confirmed, click Sign and Submit document. Users will be redirected to the document signing page. Select an ID type from the drop-down. Insert your ID and password. Then tick the checkbox to acknowledge a statement. After the details have been confirmed, click Submit to complete signing. A pop-up will appear showing successful submission of the document. Click on Finished to complete the submission. Both buyer and supplier will receive email notifications after a successful submission, and this is what the email will look like. As mentioned before, the process for creating other types of regular documents such as debit, credit, and refund notes are largely like a regular invoice document. First, at the New Document page, you will need to choose a different option from the Type of Document drop-down, based on the document you would like to issue. At the Basic Information page, there is an additional field labeled Reference, which allows users to refer to an invoice issued previously. You can also add reference to multiple UUID. We will explain on how to get the UUID from e-Invoice that has already been created. Users can key in the document UUID in the search box and click the search icon to find it. Do note that to do this, the reference document must be an e-Invoice type document that has been validated. If a reference is not applicable, just toggle to the NA button. The NA button is added mainly to assist the taxpayer when referencing invoices issued prior to August 2024. This feature may be removed in the near future. Therefore, it is advised to not use this NA button as a safety net. E-invoices issued after August 2024 should be able to be referenced using their UUID. Next, we will look at self-built documents. The process is alike to regular documents. First, at the New Document page, you will need to choose from the self-built options in the Type of Document drop-down. The key difference is in the supplier and buyer details page. Since self-built documents involve buyers issuing the document, the buyer section fields would have been automatically filled up using information extracted from the user's taxpayer profile. For the supplier section, users have to key in the ID and TIN of the supplier, followed by the remaining fields once the supplier details has been validated. As with regular credit, debit, and refund notes, there will be an additional field labeled Reference in the self-built credit, debit, and refund notes form, which allow users to refer to validated self-built invoices issued previously. Lastly is Consolidated Invoice. At the New Document page, select any type of document from the drop-down. The difference starts from the buyer details. For the Consolidated e-Invoice, user can just use NA for ID number and the general TIN stated here. Since Consolidated Invoice compiles multiple transactions, user can put NA for all the information filled in buyer's details. Under Line and Items page, the Classification Code drop-down, select Consolidated e-Invoice. Therefore, the process will be the same with regular invoice submission. With this, we have learned how to create and submit documents on the MyInvoice portal.